Hello and welcome to Women's Biz Podcast. I'm Annie Gibbons, founder and CEO of Women's Biz Global, and I invite you to get comfortable and listen in on candid conversations I have with fascinating women from around the globe. Business leaders, entrepreneurs, humanitarians, athletes, and a whole lot of regular people. Tune in as they let their guard down and open up on aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure success, and what they have learned along the way. These conversations aim to inspire you to embrace opportunities and possibilities beyond the limits of your imagination. Reclaim your power, strength, and vulnerability. Stand in your truth and propel yourself towards the life you dream to live. Hello and welcome everyone to Women's Biz Podcast. This is Annie Gibbons, your host, and I am delighted to introduce you to a very special lady today. Her name is Christy Pretzinger, and she is the CEO and founder of Writer Girl. Christy is not just a business leader, she's also a passionate advocate for creating an environment where people can not only survive, but truly thrive. And don't we all want that? I'm looking forward to our conversations where we will be talking about things like how you start and grow a business that is uniquely founded on kindness. What a great place to start, right? Christy's journey is more than just a story of business success. It's a narrative of building a workplace that prioritizes both people and profits. She brings a wealth of real-world learnings that are going to inspire you, and we're going to have a great conversation today. So let's dive in. Welcome to the program, Christy.
Thank you for having me, Annie.
It's a delight to have you here today. So, as I shared, you're passionate about building environments where people can thrive, and you've done that at your company called Writer Girl. So, what does that actually mean? What are the key principles and strategies that have been instrumental to you to be able to foster this kind of workplace?
Well, Annie, sometimes it's only in hindsight that you realize kind of what you've done. But I'm very, I was always intentional. As you mentioned, when I first started building Writer Girl, I had said to my accountant at the time that if I can't build a business based on kindness, I'll go back to being a freelance writer, which is what I was prior to. And it wasn't like I spent every day thinking about that, but I had very clearly put it out there with intention. And then, as most people know, if you've ever built a business, you have to do everything. You're wearing all the hats. So I was wearing all of the hats and just working very hard building the business. And then as I hired more people, I realized, that's just kind of who I am. That's the person that I am. And I always said that I wanted to be the same person to somebody who swept up the floor as I was to the CEO of someplace. So I was really focused and sincere about being genuine always with everyone that worked with us. So I think what happened with that is that it attracted people who are like-minded. We've ended up with a group of people who are similar in that way. And also over time, that I have several employees. I think my longest employee is 12 years. And then there's like 11 and 10 and 9 and 8, I think. So there's quite a few that have been there for quite a long time. And what I've learned, again, in hindsight, looking over time, is that trust is a long game. And so I am someone who says what I mean and I mean what I say. But in this world, frequently people don't really believe that. They have to see it to believe it. And that's understandable. So over time, people have seen that from me. And then the people who've been around a long time can tell new people, oh yeah, this really is how it works here. And then that, the whole thing kind of grows from there.
Wow. I tell you what, that is true. Like attracts like. And most people don't actually think companies do operate that way. They're a little cynical, if you like, about that.
Yeah.
So I love that you have used that word. And I tell you what, I was at a wedding a couple of years ago, and they were saying, what recipe do they want to found their marriage on? And they asked everyone in the audience, and it actually came down to kindness. And I thought that was a really nice word to go, kindness. And it's a bit like that, well, that's a marriage scenario, but a business, you're spending a lot of time together, you're getting very close. Trust, as you say, builds over a long period of time. Can also go down very quickly. Up with the stairs, down with the elevator. Isn't that the saying? And it's so important to have this cultural balance. So how have you found then? You've had numerous staff, and when you've got that longevity of staff, it's a really good sign for any business when they don't have that high turnover. So how have you believed that this approach, one, it sounds like it's just organic in the way you operate, but how would you believe for other people who haven't really thought about this, it's a really a crucial way to be successful in business?
Well, Annie, a long time ago, actually, right as I was building Writer Girl, I had a coach, and she said to me at the time, Writer Girl is you, and you are Writer Girl, and it won't grow until you do. And I think that's
Mm,
really a really good experience share for people, is to look within yourself and understand that as a leader of an organization, that you need to grow in order for the organization to grow. It's an entity, right? Just like
mm,
a human. And
mm.
maybe that's not the best analogy, but I think that for me, what I did at that time, well, I've certainly read business books at that time. What I did is I read a lot of like more spiritual self-help books. I would get up every morning, I would read for a little while, I would meditate, and it just really allowed me to focus on understanding myself and building my own self-awareness. I always have believed, and I still believe, that personal development is key to success, because it's sort of like, there's no such thing as business ethics. There's just ethics. There's no such
Yeah.
thing as personal and professional development. It's all development of the person, right? And you bring your whole self to work. So one of the things that we do at my company is we give everybody money every year for personal development, and they can use it for something that is work related. Somebody bought a bike one year. Somebody else did yoga teacher training. Somebody did a painting class. So it's just the whole, an attention to the whole person is very important. So for me, learning about myself also involved learning about the Enneagram. Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
I am, but I'd love you to share it with the listeners.
Sure. The Enneagram is a personality typing system. There are many out there, but the difference about this one that I enjoy and find incredibly helpful is that it looks at your motivation as opposed to just your behavior, because the behavior of different types can look very similar. Like depending, when I was building the business, I looked like a different type because I was very goal oriented, very focused, I had to get a lot of work done. And now that I'm in a different place and I work on the business, not in the business, I'm probably more like my natural type. And so that's been very helpful, because what I learned was also about the downside of my type. Some of the things about the type that I am, I'm a 7, which is also referred to as a head type in the Enneagram. And what I can do, I process very quickly. It doesn't mean that I'm smarter than anybody. In fact, it can sometimes make me impulsive, but I process quickly. And I realize that can put people off, particularly employees who already might feel a little bit in a different position just because I'm the boss. And so what I've learned through all of that self-awareness is to really slow down and be very aware of to whom I'm speaking. And I know their types. We all know each other's types. Everyone is typed, and we do workshops on this so that people can not only develop their own self-awareness, but be aware of their coworkers, which then helps develop not only personal EQ, but team EQ. And so you can look at someone else and be like, okay, this person processes much more slowly than I do. And I want to leave a lot of room for her to process this, because I really want to hear what she has to say. So then I need to just stop talking and just wait patiently, which is not my normal tendency, but I learned to do those things. And I think that helps make a more effective leader in my experience. Just being aware of the things about you that might be off-putting or counterproductive to being an effective leader.
Oh, beautifully shared and expressed to our listeners. If you haven't thought about that before, I love that. I love that extra level that it is done from a team perspective as well. So first of all, you're starting about learning about these things yourself. How do you respond in different circumstances? What motivates you? What drives you? The fact that you can be very different in a startup phase to then once you're actually growing and then scaling. We're not always, a constant, and we can have different motivators. But to actually be done from a team perspective, I love that, because I'm probably a lot more like your personality type, Christy, quick, fast, fast, fast. And while that can be, have advantages, you certainly can be impulsive and make some rash decisions every now and then. It's how it's perceived by other people. And that's exactly it. When you have people who are slower to process, that's right. Some of their responses can equally be gold. We've just got to wait for them. But when you never wait, or they feel disengaged or not appreciated, not valued, they're big reasons that affects the bottom line of business. One, it's terribly from a human perspective, but it also damages your bottom line because you're going to lose those people. They're not going to feel valued in your team.
Yeah. And, one of the other things about that too, Annie, is learning. I'm sure obviously you're familiar with Brene Brown, and I would imagine your listeners are too, because, she's a rock star famous. When I first listened to her original talk on vulnerability back in 2010, I think it was, I was a person who would have gone to the mattresses saying vulnerability is weakness. I did not believe that it was the way to courage. And when I watched that, I probably watched it 10 times. I was just like, wait, what? Oh my gosh, like I totally get it. And so I had to learn to allow myself to be vulnerable. And that is, I think that's frequently very challenging for entrepreneurs, because we frequently think we should have all the right answers instead of understanding that it's really more important for us to have the right questions. That's the key. And also being willing to be vulnerable and open with your team. Like, I don't know all the answers. Or I made a mistake, or apologizing if you've done something, or also being able to receive feedback from, your employees, especially as the boss. It's really challenging for people to give feedback to their bosses. And I actually had one of my employees once who I have great respect for. She's been with us for about 8 years, and she's brilliant. And she said to me something about sometimes, and she's very fast too, but she said, sometimes I can be so driven and so fast that I make her feel stupid. And I was like, oh, it was like a punch to the gut. Because if I want to be kind, the last thing I want to do is make someone who I have such respect for and thinks she's so brilliant. The fact that I made her feel stupid was just like, it hurt me. So that those kind of learnings. And I was so appreciative that she shared that with me. So then, as the adult that I am, I can moderate my behavior and be aware of that. I think that's just hugely important.
So important, and so interesting that you brought out Brene, because that's so true. We have to be vulnerable with each other to be able to get the best of this kind of team approach to business. If we don't, we'll always be guarded. You'll always be thinking, oh, they're my boss. They're also going to be performance appraising me, so I can't be vulnerable here because it can come back to me. So it's a catch-22, right? You've got to have that safety. You've got to feel secure. You've got to feel that there's real trust and honesty and all these qualities, so that you can then be in that position that you can be truly vulnerable and go, I'm going to take some more time to make this decision, or I'd like to think about it for a while, or I'd like you to hear a different viewpoint. Those components of, true team are going to require more sensitivity, understanding from all of you. And that does take time. It requires a really special culture that is so worth investing in. So it's so wonderful to be interviewing someone who prides themselves on it and is actually seeing it play out.
Well, that one of the things you said reminded me of something, Annie, was Simon Sinek in The Circle of Safety. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah,
I think it's brilliant, and it's kind of building on what you just said. So for your listeners, it's if you haven't heard of it, Simon Sinek talks about the importance of a circle of safety. What Annie was just referencing about that being vulnerable in a safe space. And what happens when you have a circle of safety, it's like all of you have your backs facing each other and facing out when you don't have a circle of safety, because you're like guarding yourself. And actually, I've got that back. When you're looking outward, you're all protecting the circle. If you are feeling guarded and insecure and judged and all of that, you're facing inward, and then the outside isn't safe because you're not protecting this culture from anybody else. Your backs are fully exposed. And so I think what you said about that, it really made me think of that, and about the whole team EQ. There's a wonderful article from Harvard Business Review. It's from a long time ago, talking about team EQ. And it was a very meaty article. But one of the points that I always remembered there was talking about the difference between individual EQ and team EQ. And a really good example of that in this particular one was someone, they were having a meeting, and one of the people had to come from far away, and it was an early morning meeting. And I think the guy got there a little bit late. And so the leader of the meeting said, "Oh gosh, John, we really appreciate you getting here. We know how challenging it is for you to get all the way here, especially early in the morning, but we really need your input and your experience on this." So it was like acknowledging to the group that this was difficult for this person to get there. So then everybody got in that stage instead of, not being aware of the fact that this was challenging for this person. And then they all were aware, and they all could be appreciative of this person and what they were bringing to the table.
Mm. Moving on, consistent company values, right? They play such a vital role in creating this positive workplace.
Yes.
But it's so easy for those to be just words. When you go into companies and you see all their values and they're all over the walls, but they're not played out, right? There can easily be a disconnect. So how have you lived and breathed this approach at Writer Girl? How have you actually taken the different values that values that you have as a company, and then you're going to get sort of core values that your staff have, and how have you made them sort of a richer place that they're actually lived and breathed?
This is one of my favorite topics, Annie, because I always say that if they're just on a wall and nobody can even say what they are, then they're meaningless. And one of the things that I say from experience is that your values should not change. They should remain constant. The expression of your values can change over time, but the values should remain constant. So in our case, our mission is that we build relationships one word at a time. Which means we build them with each other, we build them with our vendors, with our clients, and with our clients in healthcare patient populations. So it's all about building the relationship. So that's the mission. And then the values are, we're empowered, curious, kind, and fun. One of the things that we do with our values, and this is a very interesting thing, and I can't remember where I read it, or I would cite the source, but when you ask a question of someone, like if you say, have you felt empowered? Chances are good that they'd be like, well, you haven't really done that for me, or whatever. Whereas if you say, how have you demonstrated empowerment? Then it switches in someone's brain, and they look and look for opportunities where they have been empowered, they've behaved in an empowered manner, or they have noticed it in someone else. So what we started doing, we have an internal newsletter that goes out monthly. And we originally started, we had Culture Corner. So we had the corner, and we would talk about the values. We would say, okay, have you yourself demonstrated this particular value for the month, whatever it might be, or have you noticed someone else demonstrating that value? And so what would happen is it gave people an opportunity to give kudos to someone else, but it also kept the values top of mind, because you had to be thinking about, I'm going to need to nominate or need to comment about somebody being empowered, curious, or kind of fun, whatever it happened to be for that month. Yeah. So then over time, it's sort of evolved. And now what we do in our monthly team meeting, we had a Woohoo cup, which is funny because we're all virtual. So it's not actually a Woohoo cup, but we still call it that. And now we give out a gift card. But what we do is we, again, choose a value, and then we ask people to submit people that they believe have demonstrated that value and why. And so it's really interesting. You get a lot of different people, and then whoever gets the most, or that they don't get the most, we draw it out of a hat. And then that person gets the Woohoo cup. So what happens is that everybody gets to see all these people that were nominated and why. And they're all, again, thinking about whatever that particular value is. So that's the way that we really keep those very top of mind within our team.
I love that. I love that. Great way of honoring your team members as well. The little things that can easily get past when you actually draw attention to them. It's just the best to actually revisit them and to really celebrate, which is what makes the team. So how do you then progress that to optimizing your employees' performance?
I've never really thought a whole lot about optimizing employee performance, and I'm not really sure why. I think that the whole reason I wanted to build a business based on kindness was, in my own experience, I didn't feel like I had been treated very kindly in the places where I worked. I felt kind of, just not treated kindly, and they weren't horrible places in retrospect, but I didn't feel like they treated everybody very well. So I really felt that I wanted to be treated as an adult. I wanted to be recognized for what I did. And I didn't, you know, how sometimes some employee places, some jobs can feel very kind of constricted, you know, and people watching you and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't like that. So as we were building it, first of all, I think back to what you said about like attracting like. The people that first joined Writer Girl were very hard workers and were happy to help me do this. It was wonderful. They were contractors to begin before they became employees. And so they were really helping me do this, which was wonderful. And so we kind of built a relationship with that. I obviously had great respect for them, and they in turn had respect for me. And my intention was always kindness, and I wanted to be very fair. So anybody, like for example, even when we were just starting, when we were paying contractors, I would always say to them, here's the flat rate that we're going to pay you for this. It's based on this much time. But I always said, if it's taking you longer or you feel like we've underestimated, please let me know. I mean, don't wait to the last minute, but let me know, because we want to make it right. We'll either fix it with the client, or if we made a mistake, we'll fix it. Like, you don't have to eat that because we made a mistake. So that was always kind of very, very, very out front, the way we wanted to treat people. And so that kind of got the word out to people. And then as employees started joining, the one who's been with me, she's one of my business development VPs. She joined 12 years ago. She was such a little girl. It cracks me up. She has 5 children now. And she had just got married when she joined. But so she joined, and 6 months later, she brought someone from her old company to join. And she is now our chief operating officer, but she joined as like a lead gen person part-time at $15 an hour, which was pretty funny. And now she runs the whole show. And then together they brought the woman who used to be their boss at this other company. And so they're all really smart, and they all, you know, came together and, you know, kind of brought each other along. And then the woman who's my COO brought another woman that she used to work with years ago and brought her. And then she brought somebody. And so there was a lot of this kind of thing, and people really wanting their friends to work here if they had the skill set to do it. So that was really a large part of our organic growth. And then also the contractors that we worked with, several of them became full-time employees. One of them was just celebrating 10 years. I think she worked with us 2 years as a contractor and then became an employee. So we already kind of got to know each other a little bit. So then when they joined on, they knew what they were stepping into. Now we don't do that now anymore because we hire differently, but we have like one of the people that is our new HR coordinator is the daughter of a woman that I work out with. And she was talking about her daughter and how she hated her job, and she had a degree in HR. And I was like, wait a minute, we're looking for an HR coordinator. And she's amazing. I mean, it's just perfect. And 2 of my dear friends' children work for this company. And that is an honor to me that they want their kids, you know, to work here, because, you know, that means you really like the place.
Impressive. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So back to your question about the work productivity, I have never, ever felt like that was an issue for us. I've had other entrepreneurs, when they realize that we're virtual, and we always have been, they'll be like, how do you know people are working? And I'm always thinking to myself, if you're wondering that, you have a hiring problem. That's the problem, you know? And so we follow the mandate of slow to hire, quick to fire. We really try to do that very carefully. And I never, ever, ever think that anybody is sitting around drumming their fingers or scrolling through Instagram all day. That simply never crosses my mind. They're too productive. They're very proud of the work that they do, and they like to help each other out. And if they don't have billable time, they're like, what can I do? Can I help somebody? Or is there something non-billable that needs to be done for the organization that I can do? So there's a lot of that feeling. And my belief is that they want to protect this organization and this culture because they like it.
Because they value it. Yeah.
We're protecting it. They want to make sure that this keeps going because they want to keep working here. So
that's so true. When you're on a good thing, you want to stick to it. You want to keep enhancing it. Exactly. And all of those people would have worked at another workplace at some time in their journey, and they know the difference. And when you experience a really great workplace, you're like, oh my goodness, like seriously, you know, I would never give this up, or it'd have to be something seriously amazing. So when you now look left or right or into different other businesses, what common mistakes do you think people are making, and how could they be avoided?
You know, just because of who I am as a person, I think a lack of self-awareness is the biggest problem. That big blind spot that you just have no idea what you're doing. I think that's really that can really stop you in your tracks, depending on how how big the blind spot is really, and in what area it is. The other thing I think that I've noticed in people building businesses is they'll frequently say, well, I'm the best one at that. Like I'm the best one at selling. And I'm thinking, okay, well, then you've got a job. Isn't the point of having a business to work yourself out of a job? And so what I always did and had no problem doing it was hiring people smarter than me and then teaching them how to do what I did and then let them do it better, set them up to succeed. When I hired Reba's her name, the salesperson from 12 years ago, I had just landed the largest client that we ever had. It was a very big 6-figure client. And I turned that over to her and I gave her the commission that went along with it, even though I had sold it, because I wanted to set her up for success. And she worked her tail off on that account and did a beautiful job of it. But she knew right from the outset that I was going to set her up for success. I wasn't going to be out there selling against her, competing against her. I wanted to make sure she could make the most of this. And so that is very much what I've done all over the place. And I do see other people not doing that. I think that ego can get in the way a lot in my experience. And I had some spectacular failures before I did this, which, in hindsight, failure is horrible and humiliating and I don't like it, but it allowed me to be humble. Right. And so I had humility and could see I could run this off the rails very easily if I don't pay attention to the people around me. And so that humility allowed me not to have ego about it. And I think that has served me well culturally in our culture, as well as in the business.
I think that is such great advice for our listeners because seriously, I coach people day in, day out. And I know one of the biggest issues, particularly when you're a startup, is you do everything and because you have to. And there's no doubt about that. But it's when you start needing to release that and your business starts growing, it is so important to be recruiting. But you hope that person is going to be way better than you, because once you start looking at all of those niche areas, like we've been talking about, that's their specialty. You want them to shine. They'll make you look better. That's what you need. But you actually want it for your business. It's not about that. You actually want it, and that employee will be so satisfied. I noticed there's such a difference when someone is given the full reins. Don't you find that, Christy? Like when it's different from someone being given the job to do, but you're totally, micromanaged, to when you go, you know what, you go, girl, or you go, just live and breathe it and love it, and you get all the credit for it. And then you see the person just soar because everything they do, matters, and it's just such a growth experience. It's a joy to watch that when you're the boss, and not feel there's no jealousy there. There's no envy. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm just delighted. It's exciting. So exciting.
It's a privilege I look at it as a privilege to lead this organization. These people are amazing. They're bright. They give their time and talents to this business. And I am more appreciative of that than I can even express. And then being able to offer them like the Enneagram training so that they can learn about these things. And then seeing them some of the people on my leadership team work individually with an Enneagram coach, and to have watched them over the years grow and watch how that personal growth that they've done, by the way. You lead the horse to water, right? You can't make them drink, but they drank. And I see them having challenging conversations within their families, or, just different things that they handle beautifully. And it's all because they've done that work on themselves. And it's a joy, as you said, it's a joy to watch.
Absolutely. So we started this conversation talking about, personal growth and professional growth. It's actually all development, it's all growth. And you've had to navigate, a whole career worth of growth moments. All right. So what specific learnings have you had at specific stages? And do you think they're consistent with, the way a business grows, or do you think they were just more personal?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. What I think for me, I studied French in college. I had no business classes, nothing like that. And so when I was building Writer Girl, I didn't really have the language of business. So for example, in accounting, it's so long ago now, but I really honestly didn't know the difference between cash and accrual, which probably most of your people do. But if you just kind of start a business because you're good at something, you might not know that. And you don't understand how damaging that can be to you, because my business was on a cash basis and I got divorced. And I had to pay spousal support based on that cash basis. And the way that my business works is that we collect a lot of money up front, but then we have to work it off. So it looks like we have all this money, but if I absconded with it, they would rightfully come after me and probably throw me in jail because it doesn't belong to me. But I had to pay spousal support based on that because we were on a cash basis. So I always tell, I'm happy to share my mistakes because I want other people to go break it in brand new ways. That is a very, very, very important one. Another one is to understand that, and again, back to the finances, that just because someone is a CPA in the United States, that's a certified public accountant, that just means they passed a test. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have really good financial acumen. They dot I's and cross T's. And I've also learned working with the CPA or any kind of accountant, don't ask a black and white thinker a black and white question, a yes or no question, because they'll just say yes or no. You have to ask an open-ended, like, how could we get more out of that report? Instead of saying, are we getting everything we can out of that report? They'll go, yes. But if you say, well, how could we get more? Then it makes their brain open up and they will ask you, they will think about it a little bit differently. But whenever I have meetings with my CPA, I also have, I have a wealth advisor who is brilliant, and which also is an experienced share. Find a good one that you can work with who always has your interests in mind. And I always have him with me because he can tell me how to ask the question of the CPA in the way that they can answer it, in a way that makes them think more instead of just a black and white yes or no. That's been incredibly helpful to me. I would say that early on was the cash and accrual, and that those very basic things that I didn't know. And then right after that, as I was paying spousal support, I was very concerned because I thought, oh my gosh, what is happening here? Can I afford this? What's going to happen? All that kind of stuff. So fast forward through that, I started. At that time, I had already done had started the personal development work that the coach had told me that the business was me and I was the business. So I'd done a lot of that. But then when you go through something like a divorce, obviously a lot of wheels can come off. And so I went back and did another level of personal development. I think that I use the analogy of like going around a mountain, the same mountain over and over again, but hopefully you're going in a smaller spiral as you get closer to the top. So you might be having the same thing again, but it's a faster learn and a faster turn. And so, again, with the personal development, it becomes part of your DNA over time. And as you get older and you have wisdom, and it just becomes part of who you are. But that doesn't mean that you stop, because there's still new things to always keep learning at every stage of your life, no matter, your age or where your business is. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And then just to finish up then, excuse me, what one bit of advice would you give to someone listening in now and goes, oh my gosh, I wish I worked for Christy because my work doesn't have this kind of culture. It doesn't value its staff. Do you tell them to seriously start looking somewhere else, or do you think the person who's an employee can really make a difference in changing that culture?
It probably depends on your position, I would think. If you lead a team, you have an impact on the culture because people are watching you. If you lead anything, if you have children, spouse, partner, employees, people are watching you all the way, how you behave. So I do feel as though people who have a team, even a small team, can have an effect. But that said, I am a firm believer that if you are terribly unhappy in your position, you should find something else. Find a place where you are valued, where what you bring to the table is valued. I frequently say that positions are replaceable, but people are not, that the special magic that they bring would be missed if they left. And I think that you need to recognize that you have a special magic and you have a special talent. And if you're in the right workplace, which hopefully workplaces are changing, that they will recognize that and appreciate that and set you up to succeed with that genius that you bring.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the program today. It's been such a fantastic conversation. You've got a wealth of information. I know our listeners will be like, wow, some of you might need to listen again. If you've got any questions, I encourage you to put them in the chat, whatever platform you're listening on, whether it's an audio platform streaming or whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, live, Facebook, Instagram, doesn't matter where it is. Drop your questions in and Christy and I can get back to you. We would love to make sure that you are empowered on your journey wherever you are at the moment. Definitely reach out to womensbizglobal.com. You're always welcome to become part of our tribe. And thank you so much for your sharing, Christy. And I know you're rebranding your business. You got exciting things happening in the new year. It's all go, go, go for you.
It is. We are expanding and changing our name from Writer Girl, which has served us very well, but we're changing it to WG Content because we do so much more than just write, which is what we started, just writing content for hospitals. And now we do everything from content strategy to video to infographics and animation, as well as words on the page. So we are rebranding in the first quarter of next year. So we're very excited about that and about what the new year is going to hold, which I cannot believe it's so close. It's crazy.
I know, I can't believe we're talking about the new year as well, but Christmas is approaching and I love that. Your business is evolving and that's an exciting thing. And that's it. You know, when you start these businesses, you think it's going to be, that's it. You've got it tight and it's going to be that forevermore. And it is exciting. It's scary, but it's also really exciting. And particularly when you've got a great team like you have moving on to that next stage. So well done, you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it, Annie. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Women's Biz Podcast. I'm Annie Gibbons, founder and CEO of Women's Biz Global. And if you would like to fast track your future success, pop on over to womensbizglobal.com, where you can find out how our coaching, media and publishing opportunities are helping women just like you to become and be seen as the trusted authorities in their niche. Inquire today and start reining in the abundance you desire.